Something else at the back there. David's obviously reported in, hey, I've got a funny handling, and what are they doing now? They're working on some kind of inlet on the side pod there, so they normally put some kind of electrical umbilical cord in there. He's got a fire in there, look. He's got a fire. James, hey, can you see anything?
Yeah, a huge amount of smoke coming out, as you say, from the left side pod, trying to clear something. I think he may have picked up some debris. It may well just be moisture. Mechanic's happy. Car is on its way. It wasn't a fire, it was just a precaution. A little bit of a blast of the carbon fire extinguisher just to keep the underside of the floor cool.
And of course, he is now very much last in the race. David Coulthard came in on lap 14 last year to retire with broken throttle assembly. Mika Häkkinen followed him later on during the race, and now Coulthard down last of all.
No, look, there's a lot of smoke coming out of there, Murray. Sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of smoke coming out of the back of Coulthard's car as he turned into that corner.
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
there it is.
That's it. David Coulthard out of the race. Well, it's a brand new Mercedes engine produced by Ilmor over the winter.
Oil pouring out from underneath. I saw fluid dripping out from underneath, so the oil in the water jackets have been mixed up in the middle there somewhere, and a fairly terminal engine failure for Coulthard. He's about as lucky as Johnny Herbert, isn't he?
Lap 13, Häkkinen leads Schumacher by just over 2 seconds. Frentzen is up into third place, challenged by Rubens Barrichello. There is the leader. Fifth is Jarno Trulli. He's moved up a place. In the points is Jacques Villeneuve in the VAR, followed by Mika Salo. Fisichella is 8th. Schumacher is 9th. Jenson Button is up into 12th position.
I tell you, anybody can score points today. I think anybody has got a chance. As you see, the engine letting on Coulthard's car, people have just got to stay on the racetrack this afternoon somehow, because, look, we've already got how many cars left in the race?
Well,
just
Herbert
16,
is out.
I think, at the moment.
Yeah, Herbert is out, Irvine is out, De La Rosa is out, Coulthard is out, 22 started. So there are 18 left in the race. We're on lap 13. Michael Schumacher is speeding up. Mika Häkkinen, I can see him in his mirrors, and there is the Finn, the flying Finn, as he calls himself.
Yes, and we're not even a quarter of the way through the race yet, so plenty of action to come. Look, and reliability seeming a big issue.
Yeah, look at the side pods, incidentally, of that leading McLaren. There's a new design feature. You see the kind of couple of trumpets sticking up out of the back. There they are. Thank you very much. That is to get rid of the hot air from the radiators without affecting the airflow over the wings. If it works, the others will have it soon. If it doesn't, McLaren will drop it. But they've done a lot of testing, so it must work.
Häkkinen a full 0.6 of a second faster on that lap than Michael Schumacher. His lead up to 2.9. He's no longer got a rear gunner in the form of David Coulthard to help him out, so he's decided to pick up the pace.
Obviously very bad news for McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. The most points they can hope for now are 10 from Mika Häkkinen winning this race, and it's by no means certain he's going to do it. And Ferrari could score 10 points if they could get Rubens Barrichello behind Michael Schumacher up into third position. But that's speculation. There's a long, long way to go, and Häkkinen is now leading Schumacher by an increased margin of 2.9 seconds. Clear track behind Schumacher. Frentzen and Barrichello pretty close together. There they are, rounding turn 12 on their way to the golf course corner. And in 5th and 6th position, both the Jordans, incidentally, are doing well. Jarno Trulli is 5th.
Yes, Coulthard's car must have been incredibly hot, having had the safety car laps where they can tend to pick up a lot of engine temperature, not much air going through the side pods, and then that awfully long pit stop. And it doesn't surprise me at all. He had engine failure on the way out. Whether it was his reason for going in or not is another matter. Louise is down with Eddie Irvine.
Eddie, from the camera angles that we could see, it was a bit difficult to tell who collected who. Talk us through it.
No one collected anyone. De La Rosa just hit the wall and bounced out in the middle. I lifted to slow down. The car just spun the minute I lifted. It's the handling thing we've been talking about.
So, and there is Frentzen. And behind him, Barrichello. Now, this is looking good for Jordan. I was talking to Mike Gascoigne, the designer, just before the race started, and he was very, very optimistic about their chances. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who joined Jordan last year and won 2 races for them, finished second here in Australia and showed how happy he was in his then new team. and he's now a completely rejuvenated driver, showing all the class and style that we always thought he'd got, keeping ahead of Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari. Now we are with
You're on board Barrichello.
the Ferrari of Barrichello now in fourth position, looking at Frentzen ahead of us. What's he thinking, Martin?
He's thinking, I need to get past this Jordan in a hurry. I'm already 10 seconds behind the leader, and he's currently lapping 1.3, 1.4 slower than Michael Schumacher, his teammate. So that gives you a gauge of how much time it's costing him in the turbulent air coming off of the back of that Jordan. And there's a few areas of this racetrack where it's very difficult to follow another car and actually see your line too. So Rubens needs to really have quite a big stab anytime soon. And just to translate what Eddie Irvine said, basically, De La Rosa went off in front of him. He lifted the throttle in avoidance and spun off. So that's quite an alarming handling trait that Eddie referred to as having spoken about before this weekend.
Great to see that on-board stuff from the car, incidentally. We hope to show you a lot more of that this year. And Barrichello crowding Heinz-Harald Frenzen's Jordan with Trulli behind him. Trulli is another driver, of course, who has moved from the Prost team last year to Jordan, and news from James Allen.
I'm just looking at this situation, the same as you guys, with Barrichello stuck behind Heinz-Harald Frentzen. It seems to me that Ferrari and McLaren are very much on the same pace, like lapping in the 132s, the 133s, on roughly the same strategy. But I'm pretty sure that Jordan's got a lot of fuel on board. They did it a lot last year. Frentzen was strong with a heavy car. He was able to push it right to the limit. And of course, that safety car period will really have helped him. He'll have been able to go longer into the race. We might even see him coming in around that 40, 45 even, with that fuel conservation he was able to do under the safety car. He is a player in this race because, of course, Ferrari and McLaren still have some question marks about their reliability.
We've just reached just over quarter distance of this race, Murray, and we've got a situation where Häkkinen 3.4 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who's a further 8 ahead of Frentzen, and Barrichello, as you can see, just 0.4 of a second behind.
Now, the race could be transformed by drivers being on different strategies. We don't know what the situation is. It's difficult to see, I think, Häkkinen and Schumacher being on different strategies to each other, but they might well be.
New fastest lap for Michael Schumacher, taking 0.3 of a second out of Häkkinen that time around on a 1:32.4.
Now, it's a pity we can't see it because from 9th place down to 13th, there is a colossal battle going on between Ralf Schumacher in the BMW Williams, Zonta in the BAR, Wurz in the Benetton, Jenson Button is tucked up underneath his rear wing, and Jean Alesi is up there as well. But we look now at the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. Now, where is he in really? You can see he's out of sight of Mika Häkkinen on this part of the course, but he's quicker. The gap between the two is now 3.2 seconds. The fastest lap we've had is Michael Schumacher, 1:32.47. Fastest lap we had last year was 0.3 of a second slower than that by Michael Schumacher himself. We're on lap 17. There's a long way to go. We're going to leave you, but be back soon. Here is the newly liveried BAR of Ricardo Zonta from Brazil.
Häkkinen out, Murray. I think that's Häkkinen slowing.
Mika Häkkinen out of the race. Both McLarens, as they were in 1999, retiring, and Michael Schumacher goes into the lead. And it looks as though if he can keep going, he's in a very strong position to do well in Australia, which is something he has never done before. Mustn't get too excited about the situation, but a very, very unhappy race for McLaren, as it was last year. Last year they had the fastest car, but they had problem after problem through the season, and there's no doubt about the fact that it was reliability that cost them the Constructors' World Championship. Schumacher leads, the flags are flying, there is the proof. Schumacher leads the Australian Grand Prix, Häkkinen is out of it, Coulthard is out of it. Frentzen, as he was last year, is in second place, but behind a different Ferrari. Last year it was Eddie Irvine's car. This year it is that man's car, Michael Schumacher. Rubens Barrichello is third in the second Ferrari, and James Allen is in the pits.
Well, Murray, I watched that drama unfold down here in the McLaren garage. Actually, it was just beginning to kick off, just before we went to the break. I have everything crossed that Mika Häkkinen wouldn't retire during a break. Just think about all the letters we get. But basically, I think it's some form of power problem. The engineers started to sense there was some difficulties. They were looking at the computer screens. They had some batteries ready. On the lower left-hand side of the side pod, there was something that they were going to hopefully top up, or it was something to do with power, electricity, I feel. It's a problem that Häkkinen had, of course, yesterday morning. He only got about 4 or 5 laps in of the morning practice session. They had to change the whole back end of the car. I think it's the same problem, possibly revisited. Something to do with power failure anyway. McLaren mechanics, of course, completely gutted. Worked very hard this weekend. Thought they were onto something here. But again, once again, second year in a row, going home with nothing.
I suspect they were trying to recharge the air valve system, probably, James. And in that case, judging by the amount of smoke coming out of the back, may well be similar to Coulthard's car in that it was running out of compressed air for the valve system. And another retirement now.
Pedro Diniz
in the Sauber, so that means we're going to be down to just 15 cars.
Only 8 finished last year. Mika Häkkinen adjusting his new hairstyle as he takes his helmet off. But Michael Schumacher, now with some 38 laps still to go, leads by a comfortable 17 seconds from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Rubens Barrichello right behind Frentzen's Jordan. And I'm keeping an eye on Jenson Button for Britain, because he's now moved up into 11th position as a result of the disappearance of Mika Häkkinen. Just 1 place off the top 10.
And he's lapping within 0.3 of a second of Ralf Schumacher, so pretty impressive start to Jenson Button's career here in Melbourne.
Now, last year, as I was saying, just 8 cars finished the race. Now, I said earlier on that they've designed entirely new cars. Formula One is always changing them. They've tested. They've tested in Barcelona. They've tested in Jerez. Williams went out to South Africa, where it rained most of the time. But you can test until you're blue in the face or red in the face in the case of Ferrari, and you don't get the same pressure that you get in a race. Maybe we've had that proof here today with the 2 McLarens going out, and the pressure now is on Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the yellow Jordan. There is Rubens Barrichello third behind him. The next car you see is Jarno Trulli, who is in a 4th position. Now, there is only 1.3 seconds between that Jordan of Frentzen coming through to complete the lap and his teammate Jarno Trulli in the 2nd Jordan, who is behind him in 4th position.
Ron Dennis said at a press conference this week that even if he didn't win the race, but having led by a lap or something, as they have done in the last couple of years here, he'd rather that than break down and not be well ahead. Well, he's got exactly that scenario. He didn't appear to have a pace advantage as they have in previous seasons, and I think Michael breaking his leg last year certainly helped them out in terms of making up for the lack of reliability they had. But I think they'll be concerned by, more so this season, by Ferrari's pace and their still apparent lack of reliability.
Yeah, there is no doubt about the fact that Ferrari is much closer to McLaren than it was last year. Last year, Häkkinen was 1.3 seconds faster than Schumacher on the starting grid. This year, it was only half a second, and that is confused a bit by the fact that Michael Schumacher had a very quick lap at the end of qualifying, which he wasn't able to complete, which would have possibly given him pole position. So I would say that it's even Steven between the McLaren and the Ferrari this year so far. And Ferrari, of course, is fabled for its reliability.
Well, this is a curious lap from Barrichello. We just happened to go on board with him. He's done 2 green sections on the computer, his fastest 2 sections of the race so far, after 22 laps completed on their 23rd, coming towards the end of it now, and has suddenly zoomed right up to the back of Frentzen. Probably he's been told to pick the pace up a little bit.
Yeah, let's look at the constructors. Ferrari is leading this race. Jordan are in a very strong position with Frentzen in second position and Trulli in fourth place. Ferrari, of course, have got Barrichello in third position. BAR are on target for at least 1 point at the present moment because Jacques Villeneuve is in fifth position and he's more likely to finish the race this year than he did last year. By this time last year, he was out with a broken rear wing, which brought the safety car out. And he's got the Honda engine this year in the BAR, and it's been very, very reliable all through testing. BAR are looking good at the moment for their first point, and Sauber are on a single World Championship point if they finish this race, which has still got 36 laps to run, because Mika Salo, the Finn, who joined them from Ferrari as a result of Michael Schumacher coming back for that absolutely sensational drive at Malaysia last year. Mika Salo is in the Sauber team. Now, 7th is Fisichella, 8th is Ralf Schumacher, 9th is Zonta, 10th is Alexander Wurz, 11th, Jenson Button.
We were watching Trulli in fourth place there, but remember, Salo could have and should have won. In Hockenheim last year, had to give the race up to teammate Eddie Irvine when he stood in for Michael Schumacher. And I have to say, Salo hasn't shown this kind or that kind of performance earlier on in his Grand Prix career. So Mika has clearly stepped up a gear somewhere.
22 started, 16 left, 6 retirements. Here they are in retirement order. Johnny Herbert out in the Jaguar. Eddie Irvine out in the Jaguar. De La Rosa out in the Arrows. David Coulthard out in the McLaren. Jos Verstappen out in the Arrows. Mika Häkkinen out in the McLaren. Both McLarens out of the Australian Grand Prix. Both Arrows out of the Australian Grand Prix. And both Jaguars. 3 very unhappy teams with a lot to do. And leading still Michael Schumacher. Well, is this going to be the brilliant double world champion Michael Schumacher from Germany's race? It's his 127th Grand Prix, of which he has won an incredible 35.
I can see a Prost in the pit lane, stationary in the pit lane, Murray out of the window. So I can't see which driver it is from here, but it looks like we may have yet another. Hearing on the radio, it's Heidfeld, so we've got yet another retirement from this motor race.
Yes, I was talking earlier on and I think got distracted. This is the first race of the year, and although testing is one thing, racing is another, particularly in this sort of heat. It's not nearly as hot as it was yesterday. The track temperature yesterday at one point nudged up to 50 degrees. It's 35 degrees now, but it's still mighty hot. And when David Coulthard and Mika Häkkinen got out of their cars at the end of qualifying, they looked like a couple of boiled lobsters in silver suits. James Allen, news?
Yeah, Murray, I'm just trying to get a little bit closer to the bottom of what happened to the two McLarens. It appears that both cars went out with the same problem, and it appears it's engine-based. They both had misfires. Coulthard came in to try and fix some form of misfire. The little flash of flame you saw under the car and the flash of the fire extinguisher was because the bodywork was getting hot, but the basic problem was to do with a misfire. The mechanic was working on the same area of the car that they were going to have to work on Häkkinen's had he made it into the garages. So same failure, both cars engine-related.
Thanks for that, James. Clearly a lot to do. And here is Schumacher coming up to Pedro Diniz, who is in 14th place. 15 cars left now. Nick Heidfeld out of his first Grand Prix for Prost, the Formula 3000 champion of last year. But I think he's... I've just had news that we think he's actually rejoined the race. Yes, he's out of the pits, I see on my screen in front of me. Nick Heidfeld has rejoined, so there are 16 runners still left. Michael Schumacher is leading Frentzen now. There is Frentzen by 20 seconds. There is Barrichello in third position, and Trulli very much in touch in the second yellow jaw.
Yes, but we're seeing a performance similar to Michael Schumacher's, really, especially now the McLarens have disappeared off the scene, similar to last year in Malaysia, because he's been lapping a full 1.3 seconds faster than his pursuers. He's 20 seconds ahead of Frentzen. And Barrichello, I mean, Michael was quicker on that last lap, despite the traffic you saw him overtaking, and just setting a new fastest first sector of the race already as I'm speaking. Michael just really in a league of his own at the moment.
Martin, your thoughts on the fact No, not your thoughts on that, because with the news that on lap 26 it is still Schumacher, Frentzen, Barrichello, Trulli, Villeneuve and Salo in 6th position. We're going for a break. Lap 28 out of 56, which, unless I'm very much mistaken, is half distance for the Australian Grand Prix. Track temperature 34 degrees, it's going down, and Louise Goodman is with Ron Dennis, the boss of McLaren.
Ron, I understand both cars have gone out of the race with an engine-related problem. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, that's quite correct. They suffered exactly the same failure, which was pneumatic failure in the valve gear, which is exactly the problem we had with 2 engines in qualifying yesterday, or practice in the morning. What's obviously frustrating is that, you know, we complete thousands of miles testing to avoid these sorts of problems at a Grand Prix, and probably some spec change has occurred between the last test and the preparation of these engines, which has caused these failures to occur. On the positive side, they're all exactly the same. It is a small failure, and as such it will be technically very difficult to resolve, but when you're dominating a race and already in a situation where you're conserving fuel and dropping the pace, it's very frustrating. I think it was a comfortable result, and makes it a little bit more difficult to accept.
Thanks for talking to us.
New fastest lap of the race from Michael Schumacher. Strangely, pole position was slightly slower this year, and that's unusual, but the race pace is faster. Michael's still pulling out over a second a lap on his pursuers, and he's lapping best part of 2.5 seconds a lap faster than, for example, the Williams, the Benetton, and the midfield group that are running from 5th through down to Jenson Button in 11th place. 2.5 seconds a lap faster. James is with Mika Hakkinen.
Mika, you were driving so well there. You must be incredibly disappointed.
Yes, extremely. I am very disappointed, but luckily we have still as much races to go like it was total last year, so I think I still have a pretty good chance to score some points this year.
Last year, Ron said he'd like to lead this race. That's more important, even if you retired. Do you still feel that way? Do you feel you have the edge over Ferrari from what you've seen this afternoon?
I think we are very competitive at the moment, very strong, and I'm happy with the speed of the car. I'm not happy to finish in the Grand Prix, and like you probably heard me yesterday saying, you know, what is important here to come here and score some points. Top 6 for scoring points, I'm happy. That did not happen, so it doesn't feel very nice at the moment.
Thanks a lot, Mika.
Out of the race goes Jean Alesi, a very pragmatic Ron Dennis saying how it is, a very pragmatic Mika Hakkinen reflecting on the situation. And yes, I am very much mistaken. Twice 26 is not 58. We are not quite at the halfway point of the race. Well, we are now, actually, because we're on lap 29 out of 58. As you watch Michael Schumacher, he's lapping driver after driver. He's on his 30th lap. He's leading Heinz-Harald Frentzen by nearly 25 seconds. Frentzen has continued to have Barrichello glued to his gearbox, and Trulli is 5.5 seconds down the road in 4th place. Jacques Villeneuve in the BAR is still in a comfortable 5th position, with Mika Salo pressing him pretty hard. 7th is Fisichella, 8th is Schumacher, 9th is Zonta, 10th is Wurz, 11th is Jenson Button, and the Ferrari mechanics are out, presumably to bring in Michael Schumacher, the race leader. I wouldn't think, Martin, that they're bringing Barrichello in and hoping there's going to be a change between him and Frentzen as a result of a quicker Ferrari pit stop.
Well, they may have left Michael slightly lighter at the beginning of the race to give him a chance to pass the McLarens and still stay on a one-stopper. Or they could be thinking of, is Schumacher coming in the pits now? They could have been thinking of trying to get Barrichello past Frentzen by stopping him very early. In fact, they might be better off stopping him very late. as James said at the beginning of the show, Jordan traditionally have a big fuel tank. James is down at the Ferrari pit. Michael, with the new speed limit here for this year, just 50 miles an hour. It seems an eternity, and of course, as the world champions, they're right at the far end of the pit lane.
80 kilometres an hour, it seems so slow in comparison with last year. Really is going to have a huge effect on the pit stops this year. A set of used tyres, scrub tyres we call them, going on. The teams have found that they go really, really well. 12.2 completely normal, one-stop fuel load, slightly slow, but hey, they don't need to rush these guys. Now, of course, Ross Brawn has got to think very hard about how he gets Rubens Barrichello in front of Frentzen, given that Frentzen is obviously going to run long on this first stint.
Well, Michael Schumacher is joined just in front of Jarno Trulli, which means to say that Frentzen leads. Barrichello is in second place. Now, you saw the Ferrari mechanics frantically scrabbling about in the side pods of Schumacher's Ferrari. That is because the grass here at Melbourne has been cut. Some of it has not been collected. It has dried out, and you get an awful lot of grass in those side pods on the radiators. And the teams have fitted very, very tight mesh gauze strainers, and the grass piles up on that. They have to get it out, otherwise the engines are going to dramatically overheat.
Yes, and it's crucial for Schumacher to get out in front of Trulli, because even though he's got a heavier fuel load now, Trulli getting towards the end of his fuel, Michael tanked up, as we saw, on a 12.2 second stop. Roughly 12 litres per second goes in from the rig, and he now maintains track position whilst being in third place. His pit stop's out of the way, and that worked out just fine for him.
Well, now the interesting thing is how much longer is Heinz-Harald Frentzen going to stay out in the lead, with Rubens Barrichello pressing him very hard indeed. There is the Jordan crossing the line. Now let's see where the Ferrari is behind it. There is Rubens Barrichello, and you just saw the flash of Frentzen's wing, so it's a very close fight in the front for the lead. Now, if Frentzen can stay out quite a long time by having a heavier fuel load when this race started, it will mean to say that he'll have to take on less fuel when he stops, therefore take less time, and therefore be in a stronger position. But that again is speculation. Lap 32 out of 58. Frentzen leads. There's Barrichello behind him in second place. Frentzen was in second place last year. Barrichello drove an absolutely sensational race last year, because, as I said, after starting from the pit lane in the Stewart after that fire he'd had, he clawed his way up, and then he had a 10-second penalty because he passed Michael Schumacher on the line after the safety car went out, and Barrichello still finished in fifth position last year.
Mika Salo has pitted from sixth position. Presumably that was a regular pit stop, and that puts Jenson Button up into 10th. Salo currently running 11th, but I think it was a scheduled stop.
Now, I thought I saw Trulli emerging. No, it was one of the Minardis. The liveries of the Jordans and the Minardis are very similar this year. It's a much brighter yellow, as you can see for yourself, for Jordan, partly to defer to Deutsche Post, which is one of their new sponsors, and a large amount of money is being put into the Jordan team. You'll see the trumpets on there they are on the airbox. New sponsors all round, because, as I said earlier on, there's a lot of high-tech money going into the teams, not the least of which is coming into the Arrows team from Orange.
Yes, Rubens will be ruining that poor start, won't he, with on the 33rd lap of the race. And, well, look how much it's cost him. He's still tucked up behind Frentzen, but I have to say, not exactly carrying him around every corner either. So Rubens appears to be pacing himself slow, but he needs to pick that pace up, because Michael in the sister car has been going significantly faster.
And as a result of the disappearance of Jean Alesi, Jenson Button in his first Grand Prix for BMW Williams is in 10th position. He is in the top 10. The Ferrari pit crew are getting ready again, and this time, of course, it will definitely be for Rubens Barrichello, as Heinz-Harald Frentzen is coming up to the traffic. Salo in front of him.
Yes, unless Frentzen, that's a Sauber, I think, in front, but unless Frentzen gets badly held up in the traffic, then, in fact, it's a Prost, then this is not going to work for Barrichello. Michael's gone out, and he's lapping some 2.5 seconds slower now with that extra fuel load. So clearly pitting early is not going to help Barrichello at all. He just needs to hope that Frentzen gets caught up in some traffic, but so few cars on the road this afternoon, that's unlikely to happen.
So we're riding with Rubens Barrichello from third position. He made a brave try to get past Heinz-Harald Frentzen as they were lapping Nick Heidfeld in the frost, but comes up into the pit lane. Up on the jacks goes the Ferrari. Off come the old tyres and wheels, on go the new ones. Out comes the fuel filler. 9 seconds. Rather a slow